We're going to talk about shaping emotional behavioral competence and some of the core values that are related to that dynamic. I'm going to give you some thoughts on behavior change, and many of you think that you have a very good understanding of behavior, and I'm going to rock your boat on those things a few times, I hope, because I've been doing this for 41 years. I started as a school psychologist in 1974, and I've trained people for years and years, and I think by now everybody should know how to do this. Turns out we don't, and there are a couple of reasons, and most of them have to do with you, and we'll talk a little bit about that, all right? The third thing, we need to shift our focus. The whole idea is about prevention. It is about teaching new replacement behaviors, and we're going to talk about how that happens. And then finally, what I've done is talked about the importance of creating and implementing social norms. The whole idea of looking at why kids do what they do and implementing social norms in a positive, pro-social way. I will say this boldly, and you can only do this after you're on the edge of your professional career. You're on the cusp, nothing between me and the abyss as I look at this, okay? Is that there is not a behavioral issue that you could even make up that I can't develop a plan for. I'm that confident in my technical skills, but that's never the problem. It is always about us. It's about the people part of it, and that's a little difficult nut to crack, and I'm going to talk to you about the people part of it as well as we go through this, all right? So, and I mean no disrespect from it, but again, I can say what I want. I'm 63 almost, 64 almost, 65. I can say what I want, and you can perceive it as wisdom. Would that be okay? All right, good. And just a final thought, it is my way, nobody else's way. That's an important criteria that we have to agree to as we move through today. In order to get started, I need to tell you a story, though, because I want to take this and make this very applicable for your work. And so when you leave and you will go back to work on Monday, you can do something different. When I was a young man, I was a rock and roll star, played in a band in the late 60s and 70s called the Molly Maguires. And most of you are too young here to even know they used to have a record called 45s, okay? And we made a couple of 45s, were very successful. And when we played well, and people liked us, young ladies used to throw their underwear at us. It was a very, very heady time, okay? We had a reunion last summer, 40 years after we started playing, and we played well, and the people still threw their underwear, but it was the high cotton ones. And I got to tell you, let me just tell you, it does not have the same impact at all. But the reason I tell that story is the keyboardist in that band is a psychiatrist, a pediatric psychiatrist. I'm a psychologist by training. Psychiatrists and psychologists have a tendency to move towards each other because nobody likes us, all right? So we have this tendency to gravitate toward each other. Now, Dr. Jim Davison is a very busy man. He has two distinct personality flaws as I can evaluate him. Number one, he's obsessive compulsive. Maybe you know people like this. Continuously ruminates about things over and over again, and if you go into his office, it's incredibly compulsive, the cleanliness. He's a busy man, but there's nothing ever on his desk. His pictures are absolutely hung at the exact same level on the wall. You know how hard that is to do? He's done it. Paper clips, you open up the drawer, his paper clips are stacked on top of each other. There's something wrong with this man in my mind, okay? That's his first personality flaw. The other flaw that he has is he's never had a bad thing to say about children. Well, anybody here that's worked with kids, have kids of their own, even have neighborhood kids, you've at least thought bad things from time to time. I think that's healthy. Not so with Dr. Davison, rose-colored glasses. A number of years ago, he asked me to help him put in a cement patio in his backyard. And when an obsessive-compulsive calls you to ask for help, you want to be busy. You don't want to be available. And the phone rings, and I'm in my garage, and like everybody else, I'm multitasking. And he's asking me to help him, but I'm not really listening. Maybe you've had a conversation like this before. And then he finally says, well, will you be there? And I didn't really grasp what I was supposed to be there for because I wasn't paying attention. And I said, well, we had a bad connection. Can you tell me again exactly what you want? And that's when he explained to me he wants me to help him put in the cement patio. Well, I didn't have a ready excuse, and every man in this room knows this to be true. When your wife wants you to go to a wedding that you don't want to go to, you've got to have a reason instantly as why you're not available to go to that wedding. And nothing came. Nothing at all, and I'm going, and it seemed like minutes, and I'm sure it was seconds, and I said, Jim, I'd love to help you, but, and then I don't know where it came from, I said, but my favorite aunt passed away. And he said, oh, gee, and I said, yeah, I said, it's been tough on the family. And then there was kind of this pause, and he said, he had a great memory too, by the way. He said, your favorite aunt? I said, yeah. And he said, well, wasn't that Aunt Ida? And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, it was. And he said, well, didn't she die last year? Well, yes, she did, but our family has a tradition of follow-up funerals. You know how you kind of build yourself? You know, we really don't. I'm kidding you. I really couldn't get out of this. So here I am on Friday morning, It's 100 degrees. The temperature, the humidity was unbelievable. This is in La Crosse, Wisconsin, by the mighty Mississippi. We work for 12 hours. Obsessive compulsives never stop. Cement trucks come in, we pour the cement. About 3 o'clock, we have a pretty decent looking patio. I'm ready to take a break. The obsessive compulsiveness comes out in Dr. Davis, and he looks at it and says, no, look at, there's ripples here in the cement. There's little pock marks. We need to do something about it. I feel I've been taken advantage. I'm a little tired, and I say to him, Jim, we could have a barbecue. Someone's surely going to drop a hamburger or a hot dog on the ground. The ketchup and mustard will spill out. It'll fill those holes. Eventually the wind will come and blow dirt around, and we will have a very nice cement patio. He didn't think that was appropriate, so we worked for 2 more hours, and we now have a patio in cement that looks like glass. Everyone in this room knows this to be true. You don't realize how tired you are until you stop doing something. I grab a Mountain Dew and I go sit by the shade tree, and I literally start to fall asleep. And as I'm falling asleep, I'm sort of in the world and out of the world, but I hear little kids laughing and giggling and a dog barking. I didn't really pay attention to it until suddenly out of nowhere in the neighbor's yard come 3 little kids, a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2.5-year-old, and they're chasing a little wiener dog. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there are 2 types of wiener dogs. There's big ones, which are not very big, but there's miniature ones. This was a miniature wiener dog. These kids were having a great time chasing this dog. Well, they had no idea what we had just created. They chased the wiener dog, yes, right into the brand new cement. Now, I think this is funny. Dr. Davison does not. But the dog's legs were so short and the cement was so wet that he sunk down and he made sort of like a snake thing with his belly right into the process. Well, you can guess what happened. The 5 and the 4-year-old, the kids are still chasing. They have no idea what we've done, and they're chasing after the dog, and they just obliterate this whole thing. Well, the little 2.5-year-old doesn't have the motoric skills to get up this first step. He falls, trips and falls face first into the cement. He's sort of like making cement angels, and he's crying now. So I get up and I run over to him, pick him up, and I'm trying to comfort him, taking cement out of his eyes and his ears and, you know, doing all the things you try to do. And where's Dr. Jim Davison, the obsessive compulsive, the guy that never has a bad thing to say about children? Meanwhile, he is chasing this 5-year-old boy, and he is like a wild man. And he's swearing and hollering and using everything in a syntactically correct manner, okay? But he's screaming at this kid. So I'm thinking something bad's going to happen. So I take the little boy I'm working with and I set him very gently down on the cement. I think this is funny later. Dr. Davison does not, but his little cheeks make little indentations right in the fresh cement. Well, I run over to Davison and I grab him by the t-shirt before I honestly think he's going to physically confront this kid. And I pull him to the side. The kid runs screaming off to his mother and father, certainly to report us to social services. There's no doubt about it. And as a highly trained psychologist with the ability to de-escalate a crisis situation in a given moment, I look him straight in the eyes and I say to him, Jim, you need to chill out. That's what psychologists say to psychiatrists during high crisis situations, in case you didn't know that. I said, honestly, what is the matter with you? These are little kids. This is a patio, for crying out loud. You're a nut. I said, I can't believe the way you're acting. I said, and you, of all people. And you know when you get caught doing something that you shouldn't be doing, you know, you kind of blanch, and all of a sudden it was like he had this wild man stare, and then it just kind of, this look of peace came over his face, and he looks at me, and I said, yeah, you can tell he's embarrassed. And I said, I thought you loved kids. And he stopped for a minute, and he said, well, I love them in the abstract, but not in the concrete. Okay, all right. I know. That took a long ways to get to that point. But let me tell you why I always tell that story when I do training on behavior. People make this much more abstract than it has to be. It's really quite concrete. There's some very interesting things that we could do differently, like preventing problems by understanding how you can change context. We know, for example, that many children who misbehave, even when it's contextually specific, may not have the skills necessary to generalize it to other environments. I can be good with you, but maybe I'm not going to be so good with you. It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with what's going on here, not your personalities, but the context of that environment. We have 4 operants completely under our control. We need to understand those context issues, and my job today is to give you this walk around this block and to show you some of the very concrete things that I think are going to be important for us to be able to move to the point of how you develop interventions. Now, this training is usually done over a day period, so we're going to try to collapse it as best as I can, so I apologize for that. But let's turn to page 3. There are some very basic principles that we all need to agree to. And I don't just mean that you agree to it, we need to practice it. Number 1, prevention is the first response to challenging behaviors. 80% of what we should be doing is thinking about how we can prevent it from happening. You control 4 variables. You control the environment, you control physiology or understand it, you control setting events, and you can adjust and control curriculum. Those are variables that you can affect the outcome of children's behaviors. Prevention. If children don't do well in non-structured environments, we will put them in an environment where there's structure. We will change the dynamic. If kids are in the hall and we don't have the plans the way we'd like them to have them and they don't behave appropriately, we'll provide the right level of proximity and appropriate supervision. Prevention is the key. Number 2, discipline is an opportunity to teach a new skill. Here's an interesting thing. Anyone in this room, if the kid did not know the alphabetic principle, you'd teach them. Isn't that right? When it comes to behavior, we punish kids. I'd like you to think that when you have a child, and I want you to conjure one up in your mind, when you have a kid who has a problem, what you should be thinking about is, what do I need to teach this kid? What are the skills this kid needs in order to effectively mediate the environment in which we're putting in them? It is about an opportunity to teach. It's not about stopping inappropriate behavior. That's simple. It's about teaching replacement behaviors. Number 3, we want to teach community and responsibility thinking. It isn't about compliance and obedience. That's simple to do. What's important is we want kids to think on their own. Do we not? Think about this. How many people here have ever gotten a speeding ticket? Raise your hands, please. Okay, quite a few of you. That's interesting. Statistically, much more than I would have expected, but nonetheless, it's still there. How come if you got a ticket, and we know other people have, and consequences work, how come people still speed? How come people know that if you drive 5 to 7 miles an hour above the speed limit, you're probably going to be okay? Do you see what I mean? Most people make the decision to behave within a range of acceptability. You have rule-governed behavior. These kids do not. They don't have the same skill set. We need to be sure that they understand the skill set that's necessary to mediate the environment. If consequences worked, once you got that one speeding ticket, you would be good all the time. But what does it really teach you? It teaches you not to speed where you got the ticket. Isn't that right? Every time you approach that corner or that place, that's when you slow down. How useful is that? We want kids to problem solve. We want them to make good decisions on their own, not when we're just supervising them. Number 4, strategies and intervention plans do not fulfill basic human needs. Only relationships do. And here's a two-edged sword about this. The closer you get to these children, the more likely they're going to disappoint you. No doubt about it, okay? But the only way you're going to ever change their behavior is get closer to them. But most of the adults in their life have been rejective and punitive. And again, we're talking about the difficult kids. We're not talking about the easy to educate and the behaviorally rule-governed kids. We're talking about that 5 to 7% of children, depending on the environment. The key here is to recognize our job is to figure out the importance of relationship building. And these kids will push us away. Why? Because everybody in their life has been rejective and punitive, and they want you to hang on. And this is the problem. The minute we personalize what it is we do, we are lost. We need to be able to separate ourselves. So the relationship is critical, but we can't personalize what they do as though it's something hurtful to us. But that relationship is going to be key, and we're going to talk about it. I want you to write this concept down, and do not let me leave today without teaching you this, because it is the most important concept and construct that I can teach you. It's called the Oslo-A effect. O-S-L-O-A. Oslo-A. Do not let me forget that. Number 5, there are no easy answers or quick fixes, so get over it. You know, put on your big boy pants or shirt or whatever it is and recognize this is going to be a Sisyphean task. It is a hard work to change old behavioral patterns. You need to be strong, you need to be tall, and when that rock pushes you down and crushes you, what you do is you stand up, brush yourself off, and start pushing the rock back up the hill. That's our job. That's what we do in education. Nothing is easy, and if it were, I will tell you right now, watch out. Any kid that automatically changes their behavior because you do one small thing, watch out, because they're just waiting in the wings to plan something more egregious for you. And number 6, measurement is used. And I think what's important here, there is no inappropriate behavior that you can't take 2 or 3 days to collect some baseline. You need to know really what's going on. And frankly, what if maybe it's not as bad as you think, or maybe that it occurs in a very discrete area. Maybe it is in fact as frequent for this child as it is for everybody else. But baseline data is important, because that's the only way you're going to know when you do your intervention if you're having an impact. I am not interested in anecdotal information. I don't care if people like what I've done with the kid. I don't care if people pat me on the back or send me a card or buy me a Christmas gift. What I care about is I want to see the data. I want to see if the pro-social behaviors that we want the child to engage in is increasing, and I want to see if the inappropriate behavior is decreasing. Keep in mind, bad behavior almost never goes away. That's an important thing to keep in mind, because as our goal here is we want it to be replaced with socially acceptable alternatives that we're going to talk about. Now, 4 assumptions about behavior that we all have to agree to when we move forward as we come together today. Number 1, everything that a kid does has a purpose behind it. And while you may be in love with biology and you may be in love with categorization, when I started as a school psychologist, there was one categorization for kids that had school-based problems, and that was that you were either mentally retarded or not. Those are the words that we used way back in those days. Now we have 13 disability categories and counting. Bless you. Bless you. That's okay. By the way, can I just digress for a minute? That's a very good sign. It usually doesn't happen until about a half an hour into the presentation. But I am so dynamic when I speak that the dust rises from the floor and it makes people sneeze. So thank you for doing that. It's very reinforcing. Please feel free to sneeze at any point in time during this presentation. All right? Thanks for doing that. That's very kind of you. Now, we want to recognize that all behavior is purposeful. So the idea is to understand the dynamics that are related to those purposes. Why does a kid do what they do? If I said to you, I want to kill you, you make me so damn mad, okay? At least for the moment, well, that makes you feel anxious and uncomfortable, doesn't it? At least for the moment, you know I've decided not to. You see? A better question is, for us to uncover, is why would I use words like that are hurtful and unacceptable? Why would I want to get into your head? It's a threat. It's designed to create anxiety, and if I make you anxious, you leave me alone. When a kid starts to use their verbal words, when you start to use your verbal words, that is the beginning of potential physical aggression. I want you to remember that. The minute you start to try to talk your way out of a problem or a kid does, you can determine the trajectory of that behavioral pattern. Keep in mind, what's the purpose? That's a better question to ask than to worry about that this was disrespectful and made you feel uncomfortable. I'm not suggesting for a minute, by the way, that we don't take that seriously or that we don't have a protocol to address that. We certainly don't want negative things going on, but the point simply is there are many variables that children end up doing that really are not who they are. There are kids that swear, there are kids who are physically aggressive, there are kids who engage in inappropriate behaviors, and that's not where they started. They started just like you and I did. What's the difference? What are the life lessons that they've learned? What trauma have they been exposed to that changes the things that you and I have not ever experienced? Everything has a purpose. Number 2, everything that kids do is learned. And I said it a little bit earlier and I didn't finish my thought. Everybody's in love with biology. You know what? Biology is the small part of it. It sets the stage. The whole idea of identifying a kid as learning disabled or emotionally disturbed or depressed or psychotic or schizophrenic, those are administrative conveniences. But the reality simply is, while biology determines the beginning, it is the learned behavior that determines the outcome. How many people here believe in the concept of anger? Anybody ever been angry here? Okay, good deal. Anger is an emotion, isn't it? It's involuntary. It occurs. We all feel anger. Isn't that true? When you are angry, how do you manifest your anger? What does it look like? Do you cry? Do you scream? Do you holler? Do you withdraw?
I tend to withdraw.
You tend to withdraw. Be less verbally vocal? Excellent. One methodology. So if it was always the same, let's see if somebody else acts that way. When you're angry, what does your anger look like?
I cry.
She cries. Very different dynamic, is it not? She cries, she withdraws. How many people here become verbally aggressive? Okay, some people shout. I had a woman in North Carolina said that when she's angry, she cleans the house. Seems like a perfect wife, actually. I mean, make them mad and they make the bed. You know what I'm saying? That's a very nice dynamic. But all that being said, my point simply is here. Biology is inherent in what we do. How you act on that biology. What has worked for you, you've learned. So if we think about that, this is good news, isn't it? That means even though there's a small percentage of kids where there's a biological component that cannot be overlooked, the point simply is everybody learns how to express that etiology. Depression looks different in different people. Anger looks different. My point here is this. If you can learn an inappropriate behavior, that's good news, because that means you have the skills to learn an appropriate behavior. That's what we want to be able to reinforce and acknowledge. Excuse me, I want you to all think about a target kid back in your school right now. Conjure that child up in your mind. Excuse me, then what I want you to do is I want you to think about that kid and where they misbehaved the most. And then what I want you to do is think to yourself, is it truly possible that if you know that kid well enough and that they don't do well in an unstructured, unsupervised environment, couldn't you predict that we won't put this kid in an unstructured, unsupervised environment? We're more likely to have no behavior problems. See, we know these kids, by the way, they just don't fall out of the sky someday and there they are. That is a myth. You can't make a pipe bomb without somebody knowing about it, okay? That's just not possible. The reality simply is we have to raise our awareness. And the way we raise our awareness is school visualization. We need to know that kid's life. You step back and you start to make predictions. The kid I asked you to conjure up, you knew who that was, didn't you? You knew where the behavioral issues were. You knew the kind of behaviors they could engage in. That means you have predictive capacity. Doesn't mean the kid is actually going to do it at a certain time, but the question is, if you know they have the potential for something, you ought to prepare for it in a systematic way. Number 4, interactive. The whole idea about relationship building is that behavior is interactive. It's relationship based, and we need to understand that component. And of that kind, we have 3 kinds of kids. We have the can't do kids. This is a skill deficit kid. This kid's a kid that comes to school, doesn't know how to mediate the environment contextually, and doesn't know what skills are necessary. And I will tell you, I want to talk about skill deficits in a minute because it's a very important concept. Number 2, about 2.5% of the children we're going to be dealing with out of the 5 that are target kids are performance deficit kids. These are the kids that say, I'm not going to do that, you can't make me do that, and I'd like to see you try. Isn't that right? And those are the kind of kids that you live for, by the way, because that's what makes your job fun. The rest of the kids that do everything right are no fun. 85% of your kids will do what you want them to do within the range of acceptability. About 15% at-risk target kids, when you collective, you look at the old bell-shaped curve, are kids you're going to review. About 5% of those are really going to be the toughest kids you're going to be dealing with. And you can break them down to skill deficit, but performance deficit. But I want you to think about this for just a minute. I want you to promise me that even though you think a kid has a skill to behave appropriately, I don't want you to think that way anymore. I want you to always think skill deficit in the context in which the behavior is occurring. That means I don't have the necessary skills to generalize appropriately the behaviors you want for me in this environment or that environment. I may be able to do it in your class, but I can't do it anyplace else. Don't be fooled by thinking that what I do for you is going to be generalizable to someplace else. That's very, very important. So think skill deficit. Can I give you a concrete example? I fly quite a bit, okay? And today, as you well know, I missed a flight yesterday and I got caught up with one this morning. It was awful. Couldn't have been worse. A woman was standing on my foot for 10 minutes and I kept trying to push her away and she didn't even know it was there. And this is my point. I will tell you this. When I fly prior to September 11th, there was no greater thrill to me than being at the airport as I could possibly be. Nothing like getting into that plane, having them shut the door on your seat and you're going, hoo-ah! That's just a feeling that I really like, okay? Now, after September 11th, what has happened? We have people in lines, do we not? We have security. We got steps that we have to go through. And here's where the skill deficit part comes in. I no longer, for a while, didn't enjoy flying because I would get to the airport and instead of being just about late, I was now really late because people were standing in line and weren't paying attention to the TSA rules. They didn't have their shampoo out of their bags. They didn't have their boarding pass ready and identifiable for inspection. They didn't have their ID or any of those kind of things. And I was finding myself getting angry. And then I realized, Eric, you teach this all the time. These are skill deficit flyers. You need to teach them the proper skills in order for them to be successful. So now when I'm in line, I say to someone, do you have your boarding pass ready and available for inspection? Where's that ID? Got your shoes on. Hey, you sure you don't have any liquids inside that briefcase? And I find myself euphoric again because I'm helping you. So the point is, think about this. You seem like normal people, but when you get to the airport, the context is different. I don't know if it's the anxiety of flying, the fact you may not get someplace, the fact it may crash. I don't know what it is, but you're different. And we have a tendency to what? Biology. Low-level frustration occurring to your body, and all of a sudden bad things happen and you're somebody else. Isn't that right? That's how I want you to think about these kids. They don't have the skills to mediate the environment you want them to. Think skill deficit. I would appreciate it if you do that. You will find it will help you immensely. Let's turn, if you will, to page 4. Everybody has seen the pyramid. I'm so tired of that pyramid, I'd like them to put it someplace, but I don't want to tell you where. But the bottom line is this: I turned it upside down. I turned the pyramid upside down because here's how I look at it. I want you to all look at the ceiling for just a minute. I think kids come into the school through the ceiling, and they come to that base of that pyramid, and they're filtered through all the resources we have, the core intervention, the rule governed issues that we have. And then we have the at-risk kids. And finally, when they come out the tip of this little sieve, we know who our target kids are. Everybody in the school has to have the same skill set. It is no longer acceptable for just you to be the specialist with behavior, not good just for you to be the language-based person or you to be the special ed teacher. We now know that when those kids come through the system, everybody has to have the same skill set. They have to be able to differentiate, isn't that right? They need to be able to know when not to set a kid off. So if we can set up the environment so that everybody has the same skills, and then only when kids are more egregious in their behavioral pattern do we require the specialized services, that's when we start to separate them. The model of isolating them, giving them to somebody else, never works. Why is that? Because the kids look different. If I set up the right program for a child and put him in an alternative classroom with a specialized teacher, they look good there, don't they? And when they get out of that classroom and they're in the regular environment, they no longer look good there. Why? Two things are evident. Number one, the kid doesn't have the skills to mediate that environment. Number two, the teacher doesn't have the skills to be able to mediate the kid's behavior. We have to change that. So the pyramid needs to be upside down. I think it's a very healthy and important thing. So if this is good, why is this so hard? Well, let's talk about behavior, some thoughts on behavior change. Turns out interventions typically used by teachers deal with challenging student behaviors tend to be unsystematic, negative, or both. Isn't that interesting? Strategies based on punishment are used most frequently because the outcome is particularly reinforcing to the practitioner. Let me give you an example. Let's talk about school suspension. Skiba and others have made it absolutely unequivocally clear there is no life lesson learned from school suspension. But we do it all the time. Why? Because sometimes we just need a break from the kid. Isn't that right? And we could use school suspension more methodically. If we said, for example, you go home at this point in time, but you come back tomorrow, and for all the time you've missed, you've got to make up another whole day. We could do a cost response. Come on, we could do all sorts of things. And then on top of it, we could have a therapeutic fix-it plan kind of conference that makes you do something better to make it right. Isn't that true? But the problem is that it's reinforcing. So think about this. If you take away something from somebody, or you remove a child, in some regards it's reinforcing, is it not? It's called negative reinforcement. Think about it. Think about the toughest kids. How many are teachers that work with kids with emotional behavior problems in here? Tell me if you haven't thought this. Your toughest kid, do you ever just wish, I just wish he or she were sick one day? But you ever notice, right, we should be doing immunological studies on these kids, you know what I'm saying? They always come up, you could have the bird flu virus going through Indianapolis and these kids would be at school. I've had principals call me up and say, you know, we suspended this boy the other day and he's on the playground, what should we do? Call the police? I say, no, call him in, let's find out what he wants and let's give it to him. Because he's here asking for something, we need to figure out what that is. Kids inherently want to be part of our process, so we have to be careful about the negative connotations of punishment. It's become very reinforcing to the deliverer, not very helpful to the kid. Turns out that research tells us there's the deeper value here. And what's the deeper value? The deeper value simply has to do with what you do value. If you value compliance and obedience, then you're going to be punishment driven. If you value rule-governed behavior and that it's your responsibility to teach a kid a new skill, you have a very different dynamic. But think about your public school and the school that you're in right now. Do you have people who think that kids need to toe the line? Absolutely. Do you have schools that have cookbook approaches to deal with children? If you do this, this is what happens to you? Sure you do. Do you have people on the other end of the continuum that every bad kid there's got to be a good part of them, and they over-accentuate that sort of part of it, and have popcorn parties every day for those children, even though the kids are manipulating them? The point simply is what we have to do is find the balance here. And the balance simply has to do with what you value. And if you value that discipline is about teaching, and if you value about rule-governed behavior and not compliance and obedience, and if you value problem-solving skills, you're more likely to be able to find the common entry of how we're going to teach children in a systematic way. Turn, if you will, to page 6. So what we're going to do, if you go on the bottom, is we're going to change our focus. Behavioral synthesis is a concept that I developed, and without getting into all of the details, I want you to turn to the top of page 7 and look at that little square. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to read this out loud to you while you read it silently. This is sort of a choral reading. Behavioral synthesis is not a closed system. Children cannot violate or create order out of disorder without a compensating process. Let me tell you what that means very simply. If I come to school and I don't do very well academically, or I don't have the social skills to behave appropriately, how am I going to get anybody to like me or pay attention to me or connect with other people? Do you see what I mean? But if I can get somebody to pay attention to me, even if it's bad attention, I'm connecting. Do you see what I mean? So I got to have something. So I don't get it because of my work and who I am, but I get it in other ways. You can't create order out of disorder without a compensating process. So the means is that what we see as maladaptive behavior in these children is actually adaptive for them. I know that seems odd, but think about it. Imagine the trauma and the things they've been exposed to and how that child has adapted to continue to come to school. Let me ask you, do you ever wonder with some of the kids you work with, what is it, bless you, that's kind of a teeny little sneeze, don't do that. You either give it all or none. I don't want any kind of these backward sneezes. And besides, I think your heart stops then. I read that someplace. I don't think it's true, but we don't want any heart stopping. Here's the key. The question is, you say to yourself, what do we really want these kids to accomplish? And how do they come to school knowing that everything that happens to them isn't really so promising? For those of us that have been as successful in the social environment of the school, and some of us not so well all the time, we've all had a bad experience. But imagine if everything you do in school was kind of a bad experience. What's inside you to still make you want to come? Do you know what I mean? How do we uncover that? How do we bring that to the top? I think that's an important part of understanding the behavioral synthesis process. And finally, the incorporated environment. I'm not going to give you all the details there, but I'm going to tell you this. Suppose I took a match right now and I lit this young lady's materials on fire. Who in this room is interested in the match? Nobody. What would you be concerned about? The fire. So don't waste your time talking about what mom and dad didn't do at home, what the first grade teacher didn't do, or what they forgot to do way over in the community. You cannot undo what's already been done. The match is no longer the problem. It's the fire, isn't it? So the kids' behavioral patterns are in front of you, so when you sit down at a meeting and say, well, if his mother and father only did this, or if that first grade teacher really would have paid attention, this kid wouldn't be doing these things. Waste of your time, waste of your energy, and not very helpful. So we need to change a way and look at and understand that cause and cure are not the same thing. Turn, if you will, to page 8. Old focus etiology. How many people here have been working more than 25 years in education? Okay, great. Do you know, anybody remember the term symbiotic infantile psychosis? That's really what we used to call autism. Now we call it the spectrum of disorders. Isn't that right? You have a whole range of kids with autism. And everybody has it. And I mean no disrespect when I say this, but take a look at this. Look around the room at your table at each other for a minute. Aren't there a lot of odd people here? And I don't mean any disrespect when I say that, but here's my point, is that there's a differential diversity in the things we do, and there are people that don't need to have a label in order to get a service. I'm not suggesting that the manifestation of children who are identified on the spectrum, that's a negative. I'm just saying to you, the label is unimportant to us, isn't it? Because if you say a kid has autism, do all kids that have autism manifest that in the same way? No. But what happens is we end up trying to do package programs for kids that really might not work. The Lovaas method, for example. We go back into the research in the 70s when Ivan Lovaas did his work. He did that on 17 children. I doubt whether or not that's a generalizability, meet the criteria of what we call the gold standard on research, but people do it. Is it bad? No, I'm saying that discrete trial training is very good. But what about the TEACH program? What about looking at the individual kid and saying, what behaviors do they manifest and how do they fall out of the range of acceptability? And what can we do if they have social issues, or if they have behavioral issues, or if they have anger issues, or they have communication issues? What do we need to do for that kid? I think that to me is healthier. I think that's a better way to look at the children. If you take a look down here, honestly, in our work, have you heard these terms? Bipolar, OCD, ODD, RAD, ADHD, PDD, all the dreaded Ds? If you know what those are, that's crazy. We talk in funny ways, but look at the behaviors are manifested in the same way. So the manifestation, turn if you will to page 9. I think a better model is to figure out how the behavior presents itself. What is the behavior and how does it present itself? Rather than the diagnosis or the disorder, the new focus is going to be not how do we deal with ADHD or how do we deal with autism. The question ought to be, what can we do to help a child stay at their desk? What can we do to help a child communicate their wants and needs in a more appropriate social manner? What can we do to help this child transition from point A to point B? Do you see that's an easier question to answer and one that has far more logic in terms of where we want to go? Our job is to recognize that we need to understand the purpose of why kids do what they do. So let's talk about implementing social norms. Let's assume from now on that when kids misbehave, it's because they don't know how to behave. Number 2, they don't have the skills to go along with the skills necessary to behave, or they haven't been taught the appropriate replacement behavior. We need to think dimensionally, okay? We need to think in a dimensional fashion and to recognize, if you go back to the bell-shaped curve, what we're looking for is 68% of us fall one standard deviation above or below the mean. We want to be able to reduce or normalize behaviors so they fall in the acceptable pattern. Would you agree with that? Let me ask you a question. How many people have ever read the autobiography on Steve Jobs? Anybody in this room? Very, very odd man. Very odd. His behavioral patterns range from incredible aggression and anger, violent behavior in terms of how he dealt with people, screaming, hollering, to crying in meetings. He had a very strange view of physical hygiene, taking care of himself. He had a very odd view of how he could manage his own health by all these different things. He had a very strange thinking pattern. Would you agree he was brilliant? Would you agree he certainly started a trend that has helped all of us in many different ways? My point simply is the oddity of his behaviors don't take away from the skills that he has. However, it makes us tolerate him a bit more. Isn't that true? His behavior patterns, if you read his book, you will wonder how anybody ever could work with him, the way he treated people. And the reason, many times, is because they tolerated because he had something else he could give. Think about that for the children we work with. Do you have kids who have odd idiosyncratic behavior but they're not tolerated? Do you think they have something to offer that could be positive and pro-social, that could be meaningful for society or for the school community? And the answer is, I hope you can say that. And I guess that's what I want us to start looking at, is that we have to move away from the idea that it's got to be black or white. It's got to be dimensional. And the goal here is to help teach a skill that will be helpful and meaningful, the replacement behavior. How many people here work in middle school? Great. It's what I call the perfect storm. Wouldn't you say that? 50% of the kids in puberty, 50% of the staff in menopause. It's a bad, bad place. You know what I mean? Bad, bad dynamic. I had a boy that I worked with, and I love him. His name is Stephen C. Russell. And I can share this name because I love the boy dearly. We've become very good friends over the years. But this was way back when he was in school. This is the kind of kid you work for in your professional career. Intellectual capacity out of the roof. Academic skills way beyond school. I mean, you don't even, it just was brilliant. Social and behavioral skills, absolutely. He did not like school, did not like people, and he did everything he could to make life miserable for everybody else. And he enjoyed it, and he came to school every day. We had him in a self-contained classroom because we had to have teachers that were specially trained to work with him, not because of academics or anything, just because of the way he presented himself. But we decided it's time to integrate him slowly back into the mainstream to some degree, to some level. We thought if we did this in increments of 5 to 10 minutes, what could possibly go wrong? You know, what a naive thing that was. Well, anyhow, we said, and we thought, we prepared the teacher with all the skills he was going to need. We worked with Stephen on all the things he needed to do to mediate, and we were looking for 10 minutes. We thought if we do all these things, we structure it, 10 minutes, it's going to be our goal. Fast forward, kid goes into the class, the teacher takes the role, and then he starts to provide instruction. And by the way, it was content-specific class, science. The kid loves science. We thought, man, we got him right connected with one of the variables we can control. About 3 minutes into the lecture, Stephen stands up in his chair and goes to the teacher, boring, boring, boring. As much as we tried to tell the teacher that topography doesn't matter, okay, apparently it did. Because all the things we taught the teacher just went like that when he did that. The teacher puts his materials down, goes over to the kid, gets into his space and into his face, really all the proxemics we had talked about, out the door, and he starts to lecture the kid. You know, who do you think's going to win? Okay? That's absolutely right. So the teacher starts to say, you know, Stephen, I didn't want you in this class. And Stephen says, well, you know, I surely didn't want to be in here either. And then the kid said, you know, you remind me of your brother. And then Stephen says, well, you remind me of your mother. You know, and they go back and forth and all this kind of... So finally what happens? This got what? He got sent out. This is exactly an invitation to leave. So the kid is sent to me, and I'm working with him, you know, and I'm doing cognitive behavior therapy, and we're talking and stuff like that, and I'm not getting anywhere. And he finally says, you know, Dr. Hartwig, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And I'm thinking, I'm going nowhere. Why not, you know? And he said, you think education is important? And I said, I do. And he said, you think that if you have a good education, you're going to be successful in life? I said, I do. And he said, you have a PhD. I said, that's true too. He said, it's not about intellectual capacity, is it? His words, not mine. He said, it's about perseverance. Is it not? And I said, it is. And I'm thinking I'm getting this kid, okay? And then he said to me, he said, how much money do you have in your pocket? And I said, now I don't see the trail anymore. And I said, I don't see where we're going with this. He said, just tell me how much money. Well, I'm the father at this time of 4 daughters, okay? I put money out on my chest at night, I wake up the next day and it's all gone, okay? So I'm digging through my pocket and then, you know, I pull out $1.17, enough to buy a couple Mountain Dews and maybe a cookie, you know what I'm saying? And he says, you have a PhD and you have $1.17 in your pocket. I said, and I'm still not making the connection. I said, yes. And he said, well, I don't even have an 8th grade education. And he digs into his pocket and he pulls out a wad of money. He's got over $100 on him, okay? And he said, let's talk about the importance of education. And he literally puts it on the board. PhD, $1.17, barely an 8th grade education, $100.22 or something like that. And he said, now tell me again how important education is. I'm dying here. Do you see what I'm saying? So I finally said, you know, I said, and I was just struggling. I finally said, you know, how about if you use a different finger then? I was trying to get off the task. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, the next time the class is boring, I said, how about if you go like this to the teacher? And the kid says to me, well, will that work? And I say, yes, I'm a psychologist. If it doesn't work, I can blame somebody else. So he goes into the classroom, true story. The class gets boring within a very short period of time. Stephen gives the teacher a thumbs up. The teacher looks at him, now uses proximity control appropriately, puts the materials down, goes over to the kid and says, thank you. I really appreciate the compliment. And he gives the kid a 2 thumbs up. And he walks away. Stephen is stunned. The teacher is feeling very proud of himself. Fast forward, Stephen comes to see me later on in the day and he says, you know, I got to tell you, something happened in this class that I wasn't really expecting. I said, what? He said, well, when you told me to do that thumb thing, I thought maybe I'd really get them all ripped, roaring up and going to the field. He said, but instead he came to me after class and told me, he said, you know, he liked having me in his class and that he was wondering if he and I could maybe work things out. He said, you know, the guy is still boring, but I think, and this is his words because he'd heard me talking about some of my work, and he said, I think I can help him differentiate some of his curriculum so it's not so boring for other kids. I mean, I'm saying, holy cripe's sake, this is great. So kid walks away and I'm thinking, wow, this is a victory. Well, it's 5 o'clock and the teacher, how many people remember Barney Miller from Andy of Mayberry? I mean, skinny little guy, this guy, he had pocket protectors and all. He comes in, he's pulling his pants up like this, you know, kind of, you know, saying, I'm really pretty good. And he says, say, you know, that boy we've been working with, that Stephen, he and I, never used his name before, by the way. He said, I think he and I have connected, and I think I'm going to be able to help him. I didn't have the heart to tell him that this meant that. You know what I'm saying? So think about this. The next time you're in your meeting with your director of special ed or your superintendent or your building principal and it's boring, you can say, wow, nice meeting. Okay? They don't really need to know you mean that.
You replaced the behavior.
That's exactly right. Let me just show you a concrete example. Ever having a bad day, promise me, I will promise you, if you use that technique driving down the street or if somebody really irritates you, if you can just even give a little thumbs up like that, you will feel so good in your heart. I will tell you. You will start to laugh and it will change the dynamic of what happens to the outcome. I promise you. Now, so what is it? What do you want to do here? Let's go. We've got a half an hour. So let's talk about the whole idea of the replacement behavior. So define the standard. It's the norm that matters when changing behaviors. You know, you may think this is easy, but classroom teachers have a very difficult time telling you what they want the kid to do. They're very good at saying, I don't want him to do this, I don't want him to misbehave. And you say to them, well, what is it you would like him to be doing? And they just say, I just want him to behave. No. We got to have concrete expectations, manifestations. So we want to define the behavior, and how do we find it? We look at the norm. What's everybody else doing? We want to focus on normalizing behaviors. We need to recognize that these behaviors are going to have to be shaped. They don't have to completely eliminate the problem, but we have to recognize there's going to be a shaping process involved in it. We're going to reduce the motivation to exhibit the maladaptive behavior, and how are we going to do that? We're going to use a combination of ignoring and generalization and reinforcement of alternative competing behaviors. How many people in this room think that they're a pretty positive person? Raise your hand. You know this is a trap, don't you? Yes, it is. But you're not. And you want to know why? Because everything you do that's positive, for the most part, is contingency-based. Kid turns in their work. Kid says thank you. Kid shows up on time. People do nice things to you. Something happens before they get the reinforcement. Do you see before you deliver it? A truly positive person does it non-contingently. The most powerful reinforcement you have, in my opinion, is non-contingent positive reinforcement, even to difficult children. Turns out, interesting enough, and the research is quite clear about this, there's something that happens when you say something nice to a person or a child that you're struggling with in terms of behavior. If you're a kid in my class and you're really irritating me, if I can say something nice to you, it has more effect on the deliverer than it does on the receiver. I don't even know if deliverer is a word. Is it? I think I just made it up. But the person that gives it is more likely to feel better about it. Why? Think about this for just a minute. Ever have anybody that made you feel bad? Ever have anybody in your life that say something that made you feel uncomfortable? And what is your normal reaction? You try to avoid that person, don't you? But what really empowers you? What really empowers you is when you confront that person, not in a directive way, but in a way that makes it look like it hasn't bothered you. For example, ever have a parent difficult meeting? How hard is it to shake their hand when they leave? How hard is it to shake their hand when they come in? The fact of the matter is, when you change your demeanor, it changes not only the biology of what you feel because of the low-level behaviors, but it also changes the outcome. Non-contingent positive reinforcement is about giving it for free. And there are a couple things that are important to help you do this. Number one is, if you have a clock in your room, and I prefer the kind that the dial, I don't like digital clocks, but if you have a digital clock or any clock, you put a dot in the middle of that clock, a red dot, so you can see it. If your custodian doesn't allow you to do that, then I would ask him if you can put X's on the floor in your classroom. And here's what you do. Or put a rubber band around your wrist. Anytime you see that dot, anytime you see an X on the floor randomly, anytime you remember that that rubber band is on your hand, you laser in on the target kid and you make a descriptive, specific level of positive reinforcement. What is your name, ma'am?
Monica.
Monica, first of all, I make sure I'm in her space but not too close. I make sure there's contact, culturally appropriate, by the way. For some kids, you cannot make eye contact. Monica, right? Is that how you... Good. I just want to tell you, I really like the way you smile. You just kind of light up the room. Did you know that? Thanks for being here. And that's the way it is. Do you see? She got that for free. Now, and did it make you feel good?
It did.
Absolutely. Very good. And you will shine the rest of the day. Am I right on that? 100%. Now, let's suppose that she's an oppositional disordered child, ODD kid, okay? And I say to her the things I just say. What is her reaction going to be if she's oppositional? If she's truly oppositional? Bingo. But why are you talking to me? And what? I don't care what you think. And that smile crap, get that out of my house. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing about non-contingent positive reinforcement delivery. Once I've given it, it's gone. So I like to use drive-by reinforcement for those kind of kids, okay? I deliver it and I walk away. And if she turns around and says those things to me, she's saying it to my cedar. Do you see what I'm saying? And it has no impact on me whatsoever. Why? Because I've already told her what I wanted to tell her. Let me give you another example. Let's say you have a kid that doesn't like to have you use their words. How about putting a little note in their book? And then all of a sudden they randomly find that little note in there that says, hey, I like having you in class. How many people here haven't liked all of a sudden finding something unaccounted for? Isn't that true? How simple would that be? And I will tell you this. That's the way you start to plant the seed for relationship building. Subtle, yes. Directive, yes. Appropriate, you bet it is. Non-contingent, that's what makes you a positive person. Now, along those lines, we're going to place the maladaptive behavior on distinction. We're never going to reinforce that again. And let me give you a concrete example. That means that you're never going to reinforce it again. So if Rebecca engages in inappropriate behavior and I've decided to ignore a certain behavior, I first of all need to make sure that if her behavior is for attention seeking, I'm not going to ignore that without flooding her with attention on the parallel, because I've created a deficit. Isn't that not right? And I need to make sure that I fill her up. So I've got to have more positives than negatives. So you need to be careful about it. But my point simply here is this. I want to make sure that I get the message to her so she starts to realize that I'm developing this relationship seed. It's always about understanding that when she starts to engage in the inappropriate behavior, I better be ready to always ignore it. But here's a little practice hint. Not possible. Not physically, mentally possible to ignore a behavior all day. How many people here have ever been bitten by a mosquito? Okay? How many people here know not to scratch it? How many people finally, at some point in time, even inadvertently, scratch it? Okay? And once you scratch it, what happens? Right. And there is also, did you ever notice this? There's a fine line that's called sensory perception, and I forget the term of it. There's a proactive, I'll think of the name in just a minute. But there's a point between fun itching and painful itching. Isn't that right? Where you've gone too far? And the same thing applies to the behavioral thing. We need to be sensitive to the fact that we don't want to overdo it, and we don't want to have it lose its power. But what we want to recognize is that if we're going to truly ignore a behavior, we need to have time to attend to competing behaviors, and we need to promise to ignore it. But I will tell you this. You got to give yourself some credit. Do it for 15 minutes to start out with, or half an hour, or do it for an hour if you think you can. But don't pretend to think you can do it all day. Not going to happen. Kids can learn to discriminate from 8 o'clock to 8:30. She's not going to, or I'm not going to attend to this behavior. The rest of the day, you're on your own. And I know people say to me, oh, then you're not being consistent. No, I'm being truthful and I'm being practical, because it's impossible. You don't have the energy. And if you give in a behavior pattern that you've created, now you've set the bar even higher for them to misbehave. Isn't that right? So you say, don't cross this line. And they cross the line and you give in to them, then they do another line. You just keep doing it until it's harder and harder on you. So we're going to make sure we're going to ignore it. And we're going to teach replacement behavior intensely and practice it. And we're differentially, if you turn to the top of page 11, we're going to differentially reinforce the replacement behavior. That is what we want. So what is the goal? Behavior is a change process. The goal is to commit to a philosophy about behavior change. So you have to ask yourself in your school, what do we believe about behavior? And then what procedures are we going to follow to change behaviors? And I promised you I was going to give you something for free, because I know when I say this, what do you believe about behavior? I know you're thinking, I'm going to go back to my school and I'm going to have all these meetings. There are going to be people that just are not going to play the game and be very nice. Well, here's the good news. 85% of those people want to do the right thing. The ones that are negative, the ones that are not supportive, they're not negative because they don't want to be a player. It's because they don't think they have the skills to deal with the kids. So it's better to be perceived as negative than it is to be perceived as not having the skills. Same thing, the kids' patterns have occurred. So we're not going to take negativity as a bad thing anymore. And we're going to apply the Oslo A effect for children and for all the adults we work with. And here's how it works. Some years ago, two of my daughters were going off to college. I had two at home, and I'd said, no, we're never going to get a dog. Anybody been in that thing? No, we're going to never get a dog. So there were two left, and they finally found me at a weak moment. And I said, okay, we can get a dog, but I'm going to make it very clear to all of you. I'm sure you've heard this lecture before, but I've got a better part of it. Wait till you hear this. I said to my kids, if we get the dog, you're going to take care of them, you're going to feed them, all that kind of crap. You know, the whole kind of palaver we give children. And then we went to the pound, saved the dog, brought him home, and this is where I moved it to a higher level of sophistication. I sat down with the dog, and I had a one-on-one conversation with the dog. And I basically said, and his name is Oslo, by the way, and if you say it fast, it sounds like a swear, but it's Oslo, like Oslo, Norway, okay? I said, Oslo, you and I have to talk. And we had human-to-dog eye contact, okay? And I said, Oslo, I just want you to understand this. I'm never going to play with you. I'm never going to feed you. I'm never going to pet you. And I'm never going to throw the ball. You and I are never going to have a relationship. We will be like two ships passing in the night. You got that, Oslo? And I think he did. Now, this may be a bit anthropomorphic, but I think he got it because as I was talking to him, I could see that his tail was wagging. Okay, so I knew that we were engaged, all right? Now, so true to my word, if you've ever been in Wisconsin, we have lots of snow, by the way. We had some terrible days, 30-degree below weather, wind chill 50 below. It's been unbelievable, and snow all over the place. So we have mud rooms. You get in through your garage and you go into a mud room, take your boots off or shoes off, so all the mud and the water and the snow and the ice and all that junk is there, the ice melt or whatever they call it. Well, in our house, the garage door opens up, and then there's the mud room, and then there's a door, and the door is where we come into our house, and next to the door is a closet. And the garage door opens up with the chain. You can hear this, and I know that Oslo's on the other side of the door in the house, and I know he's there because I can hear his tail hitting the closet. It's like boom, boom. And I open up the door, and he looks at me, and he just wags his tail. He's greeting me, right? But I told him, you and me, two ships through the night. And I walk right by him. I do this day after day after day. Finally, ever have a bad day? Ever have where you're just weak? You know, just weak. You just can't stand tall anymore. And I walk into the mud room and I open up the door and there's that dog. And he's wagging his tail. Every day he still did this, and even though I ignored him. So I just gave in and I just patted him a little bit on the head. And wow, his tail just went crazy. To the point that he shaped my behavior so that when I come home, I get into the mudroom and I scratch on the door because I know he's on the other side, and it makes him crazy because he knows I'm on the other side. And then I can hear his tail just going like this on the thing, and then I open up and I say to him, Oslo de Laurenta. I added a little class to his name, okay? And he jumps on me and he's so happy to see me. What's the message here? Unconditional positive regard. No matter what I did, no matter how much I ignored him, no matter how much I told him he and I were not going to be friends, he never gave up, did he? He never, ever gave up. Unconditional positive regard. Who's the guy that developed that concept? Carl Rogers. Remember all those things? The bottom line is this. I want you to be like Oslo. With the adults in your world and with the kids. I want you every day to start with a handshake, wagging your tail to everybody who you ever encounter in your school environment. It is your job to reach out to the kid. It's your job to reach out to these target negative people. The fact of the matter is our responsibility is to find that approach in a systematic way. The Oslo A effect is a powerful dynamic, and I will promise you this. If you consistently do this, like Oslo, you will turn the kid around. Initially, at first, they'll push you away. Why? Because all of their life, people have been rejective and punitive. Your job is to break down that dynamic. Oslo A effect. Now, so let's get to the positive educational alternatives. If you see that little teeter-totter there, what's important here that in order for an intervention to work, there's 3 important criteria that we have to pay attention to. Number 1, we want you to be safe. We want kids to be safe. Would you agree with that? We want a good learning environment. If we overdo the safety in the learning environment, our school starts to look like a prison. And I've been in schools where they have armed guards and they chain the doors locked when you come in and chain them when you leave. You wonder whether they're keeping somebody out or keeping somebody in. If you overdo safety, the teeter-totter loses 2 other important components. Accountability and restitution, what I call a fix-it plan. It is not enough for a kid just to make it right. They have to have a plan. You need to have some sense of accountability. When I talk to you about getting a speeding ticket, how about this? Next time I catch you speeding, I stop you and you say, you know, that's unacceptable behavior. And here's what your fix-it plan is going to be. You're going to be assigned to the elementary school. You're going to be a crossing guard for 2 weeks. And your responsibility is to ensure the safety of little kindergarten kids are getting off the bus and crossing the street. And your responsibility is making sure all these drivers are doing their job. That's what your responsibility is going to be. And all of a sudden you have a whole different dynamic. There's a fix-it plan that's associated with it. Making it right. Think about this. If I do something egregious to you and all I have to do to make it right is to say I'm sorry, what a bunch of crap is that? Isn't that right? What's about accountability? We want kids to make it right. So what's the fix-it plan going to be? Accountability. And the third thing is we're going to character building. We're going to teach the skills that we want the children to deal with. And we're going to balance this process, thank you, on the fulcrum of process. Whoa. I like words, and words feel good in your mouth. Say the word fulcrum. Fulcrum. Little louder. Fulcrum. Doesn't that feel good in your mouth? It's kind of like a swear word. Really. Let's get the fulcrum out of here. You see what I'm saying? We're going to find a balanced approach, and what I'd like to suggest to you is when we start to look at these interventions, I want you to be able to see how you can apply them. Let's just talk I'll pick a few of them, and I'll model some of them, and I already have some. Let's talk about humor for a minute, and I've given you the blow-by-blow about why humor works. What have I tried to do today? Why have I used humor? Engage you. Why else have I used humor? Pardon me? It's a break, that's no question about it. But here's the other thing. Chances are, if I can make you laugh, you might like me. And likability increases the likelihood that you're going to pay attention to what I have to say. Isn't that right? It diffuses. It also is a great way to diffuse a thing. Is that not true? Let me give you a real concrete example. My wife and I have a small cabin in northern Wisconsin. And we have a wet boathouse. That means it's above the water. Very rare and pretty neat to have. And I kind of delayed putting the boats away one winter, you know, not the pontoons and that, but like canoes and kayaks and all that. And I told my wife, and we had this rowboat, I said, this rowboat was a little heavy, and I said, you know what, I think you and I can take this rowboat and we can pick it up and put it right over there and alongside of the building so it's okay for winter. And she said, I can't do that, that's too heavy. And I said to her, well, why not? You have very big arms. And what I meant is that she had very toned, she's very physically fit, okay? What she heard was that she had big arms, okay? And she said, what do you mean I have big arms? And I didn't mean it. You know where this is going? And just at the moment that I think this was going to go bad, a mouse ran down the little pillar on side of the thing, and I said, whoa, look at that mouse. And she screamed and she ran out. Perfect timing. You see? Think about this in a meeting. You're ready to have a confrontation. Think about if you said to somebody, whoa! And they stopped for a minute. What do you see? And I said, I thought I saw a cockroach. Completely changes the whole dynamic of the concepts. Do you see what I mean? Humor protects confidence, projects confidence. It's a way to mediate the environment. It's very, very helpful. Without being demeaning, by the way, it's a way for you to manage the moment. I was working with a teacher in this training program. She had a kid that was dealing with a very tough time. She didn't really buy into the concept initially, but I promised her, well, if you try it, and will you come back and tell me how it works? She had a kid that used all sorts of swear words. Finally, one day in the class, he called her a bitch, and she stopped the class and said, wait a minute, can you spell bitch? And the kid said, what do you mean? She said, if you can't spell it, you can't say it. Completely diffused the thing, and the kid said, well, how do you spell it? So they were phonetically working out how to spell it. completely forgetting that he was getting angry. Do you see what I mean? Humor, very important thing. Let's move on. Let me give you, negative reinforcement. I call this the 85% success rule. Turn, if you will, to page 13. I just got a few minutes, so I'll just run through a few of them, but I don't want to go without a precision command. I think you'll like that one. Negative reinforcement is often mistaken for punishment. Negative reinforcement is the removal of aversive stimuli, and this is what you can do. Let's pretend I told you you're going to be in here for 100 minutes, but you really didn't know how long you were going to be here. And I said, but I let you out at 80 minutes. All of a sudden you think I gave you a gift, but I never really wanted you longer than 80 minutes. You didn't need to know that 100 was not real. Imagine if I told a kid, you're going to do 25 story problems today. They get done with 5, and which is what my goal was, and I say, you know what, we're done. I take away the rest of them. Do you see what I mean? Negative reinforcement is incredibly powerful. 85% success rule. What does that mean? You take a number, like if you want a kid to do 10 things, you multiply it by 85. Then you take that number, which is 8.5, and multiply it by 85 one more time, and you've got about 4, 4.5, or 5. Kid thinks they're going to do 10. Your goal is 4.5. And anything they do in between there is gravy. Do you see? How many times have you fought with kids to finish an assignment? Think about it. You set the assignment up, but you don't really mean it. And you take it away. How about when your mom and dad said, you got to clean the garage, you got to rake the yard, you got to clean the car. And then when you got the car done, they said, you know what, you've done enough. They didn't really want you to do the rest of that stuff. Okay? Think about that, if you will. Negative reinforcement, very, very powerful. 85% success rule. Determine the criteria, multiply it by 85, multiply it by 85 once again. That's your goal. The difference between what you want them to do and where they're going is where you go. That's the positive. You can take away the expectations. Final thing, we got 5 minutes. I want you to turn, I've got oppositional behavior on page 14. By the way, instead of you telling a kid it's time for recess or it's time to come back in, tell them it's the clock. Use an inanimate object to give a direction, a very, very powerful way to mediate emotions and power struggles. Turn, if you will, to page... what page is it on? 22. I'm going to leave you with this one. This is called a precision command format. It has 4 basic principles to it. You will never issue a command statement again without these 4 principles. Number 1, never, ever, ever ask a kid to do something until you have their attention. And that's socially appropriate. Eye contact or whatever, or a verbalization. So when you ask your kid to come down to eat, at your house, you never ever give them the command until you hear them say, yes, Mom, yes, Dad. So attention is the first thing. Number 2, you make the command descriptive and specific. Exactly what you want it is. I want you to put your papers down. What's your name? Danita. Danita, eye contact. I want you to put your papers down. I want you to stand up, and I want you to come to the front of the room. You see how awkward that is? That's a lot of words, isn't it? But you're going to see why in just a minute. Descriptive praise requires specific, explicit statements. I've just told you what I want, okay? 3rd step, 10 seconds for compliance, not, okay, but 10 seconds. Watch this again. Danita, I'd like you to put your papers down. I'd like you to stand up and come to the front of the room. And then I walk away, and I wait 10 seconds. You don't need to do it, by the way, but you wanted to, didn't you? Yes, you did. I mean, I have her in the palm of my hands right there. But thank you. She's rule governed, so it's a little easier, okay? I wait 10 seconds, and she comes to the front of the room. 4th step, descriptive and specific praise. Danita, thank you for putting your papers down, standing up, and coming to the front of the room. That was really good. Do you see how easy that is? Now, if she turns out not to do it the first time, I change it by 2 words. Danita, got the contact, the attention. You need, that's 2 words I add, you need to put your papers down, stand up, and come to the front of the room. I wait 10 more seconds for compliance. If she comes up, I say thank you for coming to the front of the, I say thank you for putting your papers down, standing up, and coming in front of the classroom. Descriptive, specific, and you will see why praise has to be explicit. You can't just say good boy, good girl, that's crap. Okay, these kids need specific process. Now, what happens if she still doesn't? This is where you change the command statement. You change your mind. Danita, you don't need to, bless you, whoa, double roller. That's a home run. Danita, you don't need to put your papers down or stand up and come to the front of the room. And I walk away, and I wait 10 seconds. Now, if she's truly oppositional, what will she do? She'll come to the front of the room. And that's when I say to her, Danita, Thank you for putting your papers down, standing up and coming to the front room. I appreciate it. Next time I hope you do it right away. Thank you for being such a good girl. Okay? I add a little dynamic. Now what happens if she chooses to stay at her seat? I change my mind. I win. I told her she didn't have to, so in order to oppose me, she has to do what I want her to do. Do you see? I win either way. The point simply is that you get into their oppositional worldview. And what's the point? Do I want her in the front of the class? And yes. And if she comes up here, I'm not going to be all bent out because she didn't do it right away. Because once I get her up here, I can continue to work on the relationship so she will always do what I want her to do as we move forward. Increases compliance to 90-some%, by the way. Think about it. Couple of things. All behavior has a purpose. You're no longer going to be interested in topography. You want to understand why kids do what they do. You're going to think skill deficit first. Non-contingent positive reinforcement. You're going to work on Oslo A. You are going to be the best person you can be. You're going to be the nicest you can to the people that are hardest on you. And you're going to see the dynamic, and you're going to send me a note saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a nice day. I appreciate your time. Thank you.